It has been a very long time since I have actually sat down and watched any movie, let alone an actual horror movie that I really wanted to watch for a long time. And man, what a fantastic and great decision it was for me to go on Netflix on a Thursday afternoon when I had nothing to do the whole day and scroll through their horror section to see The Lost Boys, a movie that I've known about forever, as long as I can remember, and a movie that I know for a fact is on my list. And one that I've heard many good things about, and just all across the board. Not a huge vampire guy, but pretty much everybody is like, "Oh, it's a fun movie." It's got Corey Haim, whatever, and Corey Feldman in it, and it's just like a classic '80s fun horror movie. And you know what? I can agree with that 100%. Absolutely. This was a really fun, really entertaining, great all around movie. Honestly, one of the better vampire movies that I've seen. It's not my favorite genre, straight up. Um, but I think that there were a lot of things that I really really enjoyed about this movie. I think the big thing that really stuck out when I watched it is this is like a 15-year-old horror fan's like wet dream. Like if I was, when I first got big into horror movies, I was probably like 12 or 13 when I was watched like all of the Friday the 13th, all the Halloweens, all that stuff, like all the baseline stuff. Had I watched this movie at that age, I probably would have been like, this is one of my favorite movies ever, because like it is the perfect teenage horror movie. Because throughout the movie you've got some freaking kick-ass music. Most of the characters in the movie that you actually care about and actually take charge, frankly, are teenagers. Your two main, like, I almost want to call them like heroes. The Frog Brothers. One of them's played by Corey Feldman. I mean, those kids are like what, 15, right? And they're the ones who are kind of the at the forefront of stopping all the vampires in this fucking town. And you got the scenes at the amusement park, which were awesome. And a lot of the aesthetic of all of like the vampires, and just like a lot of the younger people in general in the movie. It's kind of interesting. It reminds me of a lot of the culture that we kind of see today, honestly. You had a lot of dangle earrings going on. Obviously, mullets are making a comeback, and I mean, this movie was made right in the heart of the '80s, so I mean, full force. But my boy had some Air Force Ones on. I saw some Converse in there. So it's kind of a nice little look. But I mean, virtually every character, I know the vampires are. I would assume they're in their teen years. Michael and Sam. I mean, Sam's probably what, 14. Michael's like 16 or 17. There's talk about him going to school in high school, so he's got to be in high school at some point. Or yeah, he is in high school. So I really like that aspect. And there were a lot of kind of little things that I didn't really pick up on at first. Fucking dog, I swear to God. And kind of things where you really had to pay attention and look at, right? Like, spoiler alert, our boy Max, that's me, ends up being like the head vampire, right? And the scene when they're eating at the dinner table and they hit him with the garlic, they put him in the mirror, they splash water on him, none of that works. And I'm like, okay, well, and I don't know a lot of the vampire lore, but okay, he's not the vampire. Kiefer Sutherland, who is kind of a low-key, nice little cast of characters, straight up. But I'm like, all right, Kiefer Sutherland, clearly he's the head vampire, But nope, at the end of the movie, it ends up being Max. But you kind of had a little bit of an inkling, because there's a little bit of attention drawn to him throughout, and then you have the scene where his dog starts like viciously trying to attack Michael and Sam's mother. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. But also I really loved, and I picked up on it when I saw it, whenever they take their grandfather's car, you can see him building a stake. Like I saw that plain as day, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna come back, at some point. And obviously at the end, old Grandpa Sleepy Joe, whatever the fuck his name is, I don't even know. I don't even think he has a name. He ends up saving the day with a fucking attaching a big ass stake to his car and driving it through. The ending is fantastic, and honestly, all of the violent scenes in particular, I enjoyed a lot. Kind of early on in the beginning, maybe, where they kill the people at like the makeout point, the couple in their car, and then also like the police officer at the very beginning. I wasn't a big fan of not really seeing anything, and I know some sequences in horror movies, what you don't see in those types of like death scenes and kills can be executed well. But I don't know, in this one I wasn't a huge fan of it, but like other than that, the gore, especially at the end, absolutely disgusting, where the house just gets flooded with blood and guts, and you got the bathtub where they throw the vampire in there and he just like fucking melts with like the garlic and holy water. I mean, it's great. And I love the characters in this movie. Michael, I think, is the great, villainous big brother hero, half vampire. He ultimately, his downfall, similarly to a lot of things, just like a Dexter Morgan, he falls in love with a girl like Dexter fell in love with Hannah, and it ends up really being an issue, because if he doesn't start eyeing this girl across the entire freaking concert or amusement park, where the fuck they're at, then he never would have been introduced to all the vampires, never would have drank that blood, never would have became a vampire, and possibly it saves, I guess nobody in his family died, but it would have saved a lot of money because their grandpa's house is completely ruined. But yeah, no, I like Michael. I love Sam. I think Corey Haim, his performance was fantastic. I thought he was funny whenever he first finds out or thinks that Michael is a vampire. He says, "That's it. I'm telling Mom. You're gonna be in so much trouble." Like it's like what? Like it's just funny. And Kiefer Sutherland is a badass head vampire. I love his look with he looks like Billy Idol if he was a vampire. But also love the Frog Brothers. I don't know what's up with Corey Feldman. The growth, and I guess this movie came out in 87 or 86. I thought it came out in 85. On Netflix it said it came out in 85, and I was like, what? Because like if you look at Corey Feldman in 84, when they did Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, where he plays Tommy Jarvis, versus in this movie, I mean, it had to have came out in 87, because he was probably 13 or 14, just started going through puberty in that movie. And in this movie, he's not quite like an adult, he's probably like 16 maybe. But his voice, especially hearing him in, Stand By Me and in Friday the 13th Part 4, it's like he's got to be like trying to make his voice sound deeper, because it seems like he's always talking like this, blah, 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 blah. Like I've heard him in other movies where he seems to be around the similar age, like at the point in time, and he doesn't sound like that. But I don't know if it's part of his character, because I mean, he is like this like little like wannabe 16-year-old vampire slaying vigilante, so maybe that's what it is. But it threw me off at points, and it was like, but throughout the movie, I was like, all right, it's whatever. He's a badass character. His buddy, is Edgar and Allan, I think, probably a play on Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote dark stories like this. Another nice little nod there. He was okay, but the grandpa though, badass. Fucking the movie ends him cracking open the root beer after driving the stake through the fucking through Max, the head vampire, who ends up is the mother's love interest the entire time. He fucking cracks open the root beer and is like, all these fucking vampires in this goddamn town, and it's Santa Clara. I don't know. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Leprechaun, because you got a family moving all the way across into like an old rundown house similar to Leprechaun, except I guess in Leprechaun there's no grandfather figure. I guess if the father figure is the closest thing to that, but I don't know. I kind of, whenever he was like, there's no TV, like at the very beginning of the movie when Sam first pulls up and like and kind of the look of the house, because it looks like in the middle of the desert, it definitely reminded me a lot of Leprechaun. But two completely different movies. This movie is far superior. As far as like the only weak points I can think of in this whole movie, um, I would say, like I said, the beginning, the kill scenes with the police officer and also the couple in their car, you know, it was one of those rare instances where you don't see much, but honestly, not seeing much was kind of a weakness. And then also, I wasn't a big fan of the mother character. You know, I get it; she was divorced, but it just it seems like her only goal and like the only thing she cared about was just like trying to find and or get like some sort of romantic life, because she brought it up to her kids all the time, and like throughout the entire movie she's like, guys, I want to have a social life. And I get that that's important, but I don't know, it just seemed kind of naggy. And, you know, she looked a lot like, oh God, the mother from Cujo, and she was in Hills Have Eyes. Uh, Sally Field? No, not Sally Fields. I don't know her name, but I mean, it's amazing. I can think of several movies. She was the mom in E.T. I can think of she's in 3 movies, but I can't remember what the fuck her name is. Um, Absolutely amazing. But she looked just like her, and I mean, she wasn't awful, but not a big fan of her character. Also, same with the female character, the love interest of Michael. I think she had like a kid, which I thought was kind of funny at the end when he turned into a fucking vampire. That shit made me laugh. But all in all, you know, I love my favorite scene might be whenever they kind of the lost boys expose themselves for what they truly are to Michael, and they have the Aerosmith and Run DMC "Walk This Way." It's one of my favorite songs ever. One of the greatest mashup ever, and probably the greatest song of the '80s, frankly. Um, and it was just badass. Like that whole scene was awesome. Great selection of music, by the way. Oh, love it. But I don't know. There's so many awesome moments in this movie, and I think this is one of those, like, I think it's a horror comedy. I don't really know if it's a comedy movie, but it's definitely got some like fun, like smile on your face. That's cool aspects, you know, kind of like, I don't know. It reminds me a bit of Back to the Future. Completely different topics, but I get the same kind of vibe from that movie. And maybe it's because like a lot of the maybe it's because the main character you're rooting for is like a young, like 14, 15-year-old kid, in the case of like Marty McFly and also Sam. But I don't know, I was pleasantly surprised. I figured this would be a pretty decent movie, but I gotta say, this is probably my favorite vampire movie that I've watched. And you know, I owe that a lot to the characters. I owe that to a lot to the clever writing, with the grandfather and with the whole Max character in general. The gore effects, I mean, they're not super prevalent, but I mean, I thought the vampire special effects makeup was adequate, was fine. You know, and towards the end there, it starts getting kind of crazy and pretty gross. So I love that. You know, I would absolutely recommend this to a fan of horror movies. Absolutely, it's a classic for sure. I would recommend this to film fans as well. And I would legitimately say that I could recommend this to pretty much anybody. You know, even people who might not be horror fans, because I don't know, I think they would probably get a kick out of and also enjoy that kind of teen fun movie aspect that I think this movie has going for it. Once again, I wish I watched this. I've known about this movie as long as I can remember, but I wish I would have watched this as like a 14-year-old kid, because I truly would have connected probably with like the Frog Brothers and like Sam as a character. But yeah, no, this movie's great. I love The Lost Boys. I don't really have any issues with it. I would watch it again, absolutely, in a heartbeat. I'm probably going to recommend it to friends of mine. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. You know, I don't have any qualms with it. It's probably now at this point my favorite vampire movie. And yeah, it's a fun 80s teen horror classic. I kind of want to watch Teen Wolf now. I don't know. But yeah, it's great. Shout out Corey Haim, may he rest in peace. And also Shout out Corey Feldman in his macho voice that he employed throughout this movie.